Now, here are Morgan Streetman and Roxanne Wilder.
Yes, here we are, and it's Morgan Streetman, Roxanne Wilder, Pat George, and a special guest. If you're a regular listener of the Morgan Streetman Show, you will recognize his voice. E.B. Tucker is here with us as well, so we can't wait to hear about his book. It's a good Monday.
E.B. Tucker, I thought it was D.B. Cooper. I was so
Pat George.
excited.
No, we're not breaking that one open today. We're going to have some fun, but not that much fun. Well, you know, today's going to be a great show because we got one of our favorite people here, our special guest, E.B. Tucker, and he's the author of a new book. And we're going to talk about that book extensively today. And I think you're going to be really interested in the story of this book and also the information that's contained in the book. But since we know E.B. can talk about pretty much any subject we want to bring up, and he knows I'm going to challenge him, I'm never just going to let him talk about what he came in to talk about. We're going to talk about some other stuff as well. We wanted to take just a quick look back at something, and these are I had a couple of clips I wanted to play here in this first segment because this will kind of, help us to consider our discussion today and some of the aspects of what's going on in our country, which are some pretty negative aspects, like we saw over the weekend, Pat George, with the incident at the Atlanta Wendy's. And, you just got to,
Oh, here we go again.
What are we going to do? Are the police allowed to arrest somebody for DUI? Should we make DUI not a crime anymore? How are they supposed to go about their law enforcement role? But this also brings up the broader context of race relations in this country, which seem to be at the lowest point that I can remember them in my life, at least, as of today. Things seem to be, and that may be part of it, may be the media doing this to us. In other words, the media itself is driving us apart. But I had a couple of clips from a guy named Brandon Tatum, who's with Blexit, and that's the Black People Exit the Democrat Party group that he founded. And one of them I thought was particularly interesting because he talked about his experience of getting ready to go to college and what he thought. He's an African-American gentleman. And then what he thought when he actually got to college and had some interactions with white people in college. So I wanted to share with you what he had to say about that because I think it's pretty interesting. You got to listen here. Listen carefully to what he thought he was getting into when he was going to college and what kind of a reception he expected to receive from the majority white people at his college, and then what did he actually receive.
I grew up in an all-black community. I never dated a white girl. It was shunned in my community. Growing up, you date a white woman, you're going to get bullied. You're a sellout. So I had none of that exposure. Never was really around white people consistently. Mostly around black people. Everything in my life was Afrocentric. I got to college and my eyes were opened up to a certain degree because now everybody's white. And it's like 35 of us, it's a little more than that. Probably about a couple hundred, but most of us were athletes.
Yeah.
And so I began to see, white people aren't as evil as I thought they were.
So they weren't hunting you down on campus? They weren't hunting us down.
You could go eat with white people and nobody would be, so there would be no controversy.
You were eating with white people?
Eating with white people,
incredible.
Surprisingly enough. But growing up, you thought there was going to be a lot of animosity.
Yeah.
They're mad because we in college. I'm telling you, this is a real thing where you're like.
What was that like, though, really? It sounds silly, eating with white people, no one's hunting you down. But that transition, as you were starting to realize it, to break the old mold of thinking, how hard is that?
For me, man, I'm a very stubborn person, but I'm a logical person. If I can see a logical example of truth and reality, then it's easier to convert me. If you can't show me that, I'll be stubborn to the day I die. But it was really eye-opening for me, man, because I perceived that people were going to treat me differently. I perceived that people were going to be shocked that black folks are going to college and we're successful, and it wasn't that at all. White people didn't care. You know what I'm saying? So, and then I started to meet white friends, and I'm like, man, everybody's essentially the same. There's like two people in this world, real people and fake people. They come in different colors. And that began to change in me. And then, like I said, when I got saved, it was like.
So think about that. He went there with expectations that were not met by the white people. In fact, the white people at his school, at his college, didn't care that he was black. They didn't care.
I love his expression, real people and fake people.
It doesn't matter
what
color.
That's a good way to
They
draw
both
the
come
line.
in different colors, right? There's two kinds of people in this world. So I thought that was really, really interesting what he had to say there. Now, I want to tell you, this was on the October 2019 Rubin Report. So if you want to go out there and find it on YouTube, the entirety of it is very, very interesting. But he gets into some of what the media is drumming up, and it's so timely for what we're experiencing right now in race relations and how the media is trying to fan the flames of this. And he gets into some of that in another little short clip that I want to play from you from that. And then we're going to jump into this interesting book that E.B. Tucker's here to talk about. But just listen to this short clip with us here.
So they're going to cover it. They're going to showcase it. They're going to act like there's this outrageous rate of white officers killing black people, which is not even true at all. White officers, or you say white officers in general, place in Philly is 50-50, black and white. Yeah. But officers kill more white people, twice as many white people, as black people in shootings where people are armed. They kill more people unarmed, white than black. And here's the thing that people always bring up. Well, there's more white people. Police officers don't deal with every single person in the population. They deal with the criminal element of the population. If you look at African Americans in America, we make up 12, 13% of the population, yet we commit over half of the murders in this country, over half of the violent crimes in this country. So the bulk of criminal activity is coming from a small, let me clarify that. 13% of the population is way overblown number. It's more like 6 or 7% of the population. Because when you take out older people, young people, women, it's mostly young men between the age of, 16 and 35 that are doing the bulk of these crimes. So let's say 6% is committing over half of the murders and violent crimes in this country. When you look at it like that, police have an overwhelmingly higher presence in the black community dealing with the criminal element, yet they shoot more white people than they shoot black people. If you look at the proportionality of numbers, it's actually a less likely chance per capita that you get shot as a black man as opposed to white people in America. And that, to me, rules out the idea of the racist policing in America.
Wow.
Wow is right. People are going to be angry with him.
Boy, are they. But you know what? He's just trying to tell the truth as he knows it. And why aren't we allowed to do that in this country anymore? Everything's made into a racial and political issue. And certainly the media is trying to play up this concept that our entire society is disintegrating. And that's part of the reason a lot of people right now are worried. They're worried about their future economically. They're worried about all this spending. And our special guest today, E.B. Tucker, just wrote a book about some of what you can do about some of these problems that you're finding. And the book is called Why Gold? Why Now? The War Against Your Wealth and How to Win It. So let's welcome E.B. Tucker to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, E.B., tell us a story real quickly about this book, about how it was inspired and how you came to write it.
Well, I've been in this business for a long time, maybe 20 years, interested in gold. I tell all about that in the book, how it got started. And it just all of a sudden dawned on me. I had a friend ask me, how do you buy gold? He asked his broker. His broker said he would lose his brokerage license if he bought him gold. And I just said, this is unbelievable. I mean, the guy was like, well, just so you know, no one knows this stuff. No one.
Yeah.
And maybe you should do a TED Talk about it. And I said, well, it's so basic that I can't even imagine wasting people's time telling them. And he said, well, look, I mean, no one's even heard of it. So it just dawned on me all of a sudden, that was early April, that people don't know this and I should write a book. And the next day I started writing and wrote the book in 23 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. How many words is your book?
47,000.
Okay.
Just under 50. Just under 50,000 words. And I can tell that Roxanne has at least toyed with the idea of writing a book.
Oh,
that's the first question.
Right.
Any person that's a professional writer, word count. Whereas regular people say, well, how do you count the words? Well,
how many pages is it?
Exactly.
Word document, yeah.
Well, the Word document counts them for you. And anyway, so I have a writing strategy, Roxanne. I can share with you later, yes. About how to write a book. There's a way to do it. Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, which is all about how he writes. He has a process, and every writer should have their own process. You can make it up any way you like, but it's a discipline. So I mean, any good artist has a discipline. There's a discipline factor, and so for me, I have a process, and I just stuck to that, and it took longer to format the book than it did to write it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Hemingway. I think Hemingway used to get up every morning and start writing at 6 a.m. and write between the hours of 6 and 8 a.m.
Exactly.
And that was his way of dealing with it. And he didn't care how hungover he was when he was writing.
Yeah.
He'd
He
be
wrote
up there
best that way,
He'd be churning it out. That's right.
You have to know when your peak time is, when you're most creative. That's the key.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we want you to stick around for the show because we're going to be giving away a very special edition of this book that you cannot buy in stores. It's going to be signed by the author, as well as coming with some special color photographs and charts in the interior of the book, some of the examples that he uses and he shows you. We're going to have that toward the end of the show, so folks, stick around for the entire show. We're going to have a contest at the end to give that away. We'll be right back with more E.B. Tucker on Why Gold, Why Now?
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Roxanne Wilder with you, Pat George here as well. And we are getting into E.B. Tucker's book. Very excited to learn about it. We're just talking to you guys during the break. And it's not the most popular way to think of things, investing in gold. But E.B.'s going to tell us all about his book and why this is a very solid place to put your assets, some of them.
Yeah, one of the things I find very interesting about gold is that all of the gold that's ever been mined in the history of the world can fit into about 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So you'd think it'd be more than that, right?
You would.
But 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools fill them up completely with gold, and that's all the gold that's ever been mined in the whole world up till now. And other than the gold that's been lost at the bottom of the ocean and maybe thrown into various lakes, like in Colombia where they used to do that, they'd make the little gold statues and throw them into the lakes, we still have every single atom of gold that's been mined and made into jewelry because gold, unlike other metals, never loses any of its molecules, any of its gold atoms. So it's a very interesting metal. Now, E.B., tell us about, in your book, what's your thesis? Why gold?
Well, what people need to understand is gold is money.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, well, why would we can just have regular money? Well, you can create dollars in unlimited quantity. I mean, there's no limit to what you can create. And what we try to explain to people slowly in the book is if your ancestor in 1900 saved up $1,000, put that in an envelope, today that barely gets you a down market apartment for a month. I mean, you're not going to be living very large. Whereas if they had bought $1,000 worth of gold and put that in an envelope, that's worth $80,000 today. Mm-hmm. And so what you see is that gold is not something you buy hoping to make a bunch of money. It's not a speculation, or it's not like buying a stock or something like that. You're not trying to get rich. But wise people own gold to stay wealthy. Whatever money you've earned at your job, I mean, it doesn't matter how close you are to starting out. You're working to make money. You want to have a better life. You're trying to save money. The secret to getting wealthy is to spend less than you earn. That's the wealth secret. Okay, Pat George, I'm just you heard it here first. So what do you do with that money? I mean, as you see in that example from 1900, the money slowly loses its value. It erodes because over time they create money to solve problems. They can create an unlimited amount of dollars, okay? Whereas with gold, the supply is very limited. It's constrained. As you said, it can't be destroyed. You can melt gold down, put it into a coin, make it into jewelry, gold teeth, whatever you want. You never lose any of the gold, and so it has integrity. And over time, that's valuable to savers. Well, now we're in a situation where, before I wrote the book, we almost doubled the federal budget in 3 weeks. And that's why people like my friend that couldn't figure out how to buy gold was saying to me, this can't go on. Well, you're right. It can go on. but by the time we're older, the numbers will look different. I'll take you out to lunch, Morgan, and we'll spend $1,400 and we'll barely be satisfied. I mean, so government, of course, is going to continue to solve the problems that come up with more money. And so gold is what you want to do is you want to have gold as a part of your assets. Queen Elizabeth or any of these people, they have gold. They're not trying to speculate and make money. This is wealth. And I told you the first secret with how to become wealthy in life, okay? The second thing is once you have savings of any kind, you don't want to go get them again. Yeah. So once you establish some degree of wealth in life, the goal is to stay wealthy. And just so you know, you don't have to become a billionaire. I mean, But really, being really wealthy, in my opinion, is being able to do what you want. And that doesn't mean flying in a private airplane. That means not, the ultimate goal is to not have someone that's commanding you to do something all the time, right? I mean, this is freedom as far as I'm concerned. And you can really achieve that, but you can't do it if your money is under attack. And that's what people need to see right now.
What about those people who say that gold is some kind of a throwback, some kind of a barbarous relic is one of the terms they use, and say this gold stuff, this is like in the Bible and other in ancient times gold was important. Yeah. But today it really doesn't have any relevance.
I mean, to some degree they're right. I mean, it is kind of a stupid gold rock, when you look at it, it's a fancy paperweight. Okay, some of that is true, but another argument against it was it doesn't generate any income. Like it doesn't do anything. But you have 0% interest rates now, and soon you're going to have negative interest rates. We talk about that in the book. You will have interest rates will not go up; they will go down.
Yeah, they can't go up.
People can't understand that. There's too much money. So when you have too much money, it doesn't send interest rates up; it sends them down. Now, I explain that in the book. So if you're having trouble with that concept right now, don't worry. We go through that with easy to understand examples in a way that anybody can understand in the book. I want people to walk away from the book with that understanding that your bank will at some point charge you to put money there.
Right.
Wrap your head around that. You will see a negative sign in front of it. Okay, so gold doesn't produce any income. Well, so what? Because the bank is charging you to keep the money, right? You buy a government bond and you don't get all the money back that you spent on the government bond. I mean,
how does that even work? I mean, negative interest rates as a concept, I don't even understand because it's where you loan money and then in the future you get back less than what you loan.
Correct. And so the reason why the Fed is going to push for this is because the Fed is losing its power to stimulate the economy, and it wants you to do it now. It wants you to stimulate the economy. If you have $100,000 in the bank and the bank says they're now going to charge you 1%, what are you going to do? You're going to pull that money out of the bank and you do something with it. You're going to buy a property or buy some stock, or maybe you're just going to spend it. I mean, you're going to do something. Whatever you do is going to stimulate the economy, and that's what the Fed has lost the power to do. So if you notice, it's throwing everything it has at the economy, and the economy's barely moving. I mean, these are $3 trillion, and things barely even get back off the ground for a minute. It's a big problem. And so ultimately, there's $4.5 trillion in money market accounts right now. And if you put a negative interest rate on that, people will pull that money out and go spend it in the system, which will have a dramatic effect on GDP. Now, of course, this doesn't happen overnight. This is a slow process. Now, because 10-year government bond is 80 basis points right now. So, I mean, it's not quite 1%. Just so you understand, okay, Pat George, if you had $1 million in 1995 in 10-year government bonds, they were at 7%. So you would have earned $70,000. Now, today, you would need almost $8 million to get the same income. Just to give that some thought. So are you 8 times wealthier than you were in 1995? I mean, most people feel wealthier than they were in 95, but maybe not 8 times wealthier, but that's what you've lost. Now, at the same time, gold has preserved that same wealth. I mean, gold back then was 3-digit number, and it was $400 or $500 or something. I mean, it oscillated in the 90s, but today it's $1,700. So if you had spent that money on gold, you would have preserved that. Do you see how this works?
Yeah.
So you're in a time of kind of radical money creation. Gold is a safe harbor for some of your money. And in the book, we talk about how much gold to have.
Yeah.
It's not every cent that you can scrape together, okay? So, I mean, there's a sensible amount of gold. We work through a formula that anyone can understand of figuring out what's right for you. It's a lot less than you would think. I mean, you don't need to go out and put all of your savings into gold. Just a little bit gives you a nice base to work from.
Can we talk about gold, the different forms? Because you think of everything from coins to bars to gold jewelry to what's the cover of your book. So the sort of gold nuggets. So what are we really talking about, and what are those variations between all those things I just listed?
So Roxanne, originally this was going to be a 2-part book, Why Gold, Why Now? But then I realized that we needed a third part, which is how do you do it? I mean, what do you do? So in part 3, we address how much to have, and then the forms that it comes in: bars, coins, collectible coins, mining stocks, which are really a no-fly zone for people as far as I'm concerned. I've been in that business 20 years. So, I mean, I give real-life examples of being stranded in Mexico at mine sites and stocks that went up 1,000% and then crashed to zero. I tell all about these so people can understand it's probably not a good idea for you to go speculating in the mining stock world. Collectible coins, tell you all about them, but say probably want to stay away from these.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we recommend 3 common coins, 1 ounce common coins that are low premium. That means the broker does not charge very much money to sell you the coin, a very modest amount of money. And then you have that coin, you're not going to get scammed, okay, buying that coin, because you could fly anywhere in the world and sell it. It's instantly recognizable. It's not it's not a commemorative moon landing coin or something in a felt case. You're never going to see any value from that. We were talking about real hold in your hand, common gold minted by government mints, and this is a safe place to start for people. We explain all of that, including dealers that I trust that you can call up and say you read the book, and they'll give you advantageous pricing.
Yeah, and there's even a dealer here locally that you recommend that you could, if you don't want to have your gold shipped to you, you could actually drive there and pick it up here in the Tampa Bay area.
Yep.
So it's one of the best gold and silver dealers in the country is located here in our area.
I think so.
Yeah. But I bought from them, and you have as well through the years. So, okay, well, I want to talk some when we come back, because I want to hear some more, because we skipped over the why now part so far. And I want to hear about why right now is a good time to get into gold. And we're going to talk about that when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show.
Here on the Morgan Streetman Show, we are chatting with E.B. Tucker about his new book, Why Gold, Why Now? And that's what we're getting into, the why now part of this discussion. That's really the interesting, the impetus is the market we're looking at right now. Why do we need to take care of this right now?
Well, Roxanne, it's amazing we even have to remind people why now, because you think if you're not thinking something's off, then we kind of, have you been on a meditation retreat for 3 months? I mean, I don't know where have you been?
Yeah, what is going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the answer is you don't quite know, because sometimes things are playing out. I mean, if you ask me what's the price of gold going to be, I was publicly on.
Now you're kind of famous for this prediction.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at this. Yeah, so I've had a pretty long string of predictions, and what people don't understand is you can't say, well, where will it be in 9 years? I mean, it's impossible. So, but where I do well with the predictions is looking out, 6 to 12 months. It's pretty easy for me to see. And what's going to happen this year is it will break 1,900.
Okay.
Gold's 1,700 right now for anybody that doesn't know this. I mean, you can go online to a website like Kitco. KITCO is the premier kind of gold information website. You can look at the price there, but $1,700.
Yeah.
And it trades 23 and a half hours a day, Monday through Sunday night through Friday. So you can always get a quote on the price of gold. You can always sell gold all the time. And so anyway, 1,900 is the next stopping point. Now, that's an important thing, because that was the old high price in 2011. So once you go past that, I think that you're going to pick up some steam, and people will see what's happening. But that's my call for this year. There's $200 more to go. Now, I made that call when gold was a bit lower. It was 1,500. I thought it would do that this year. So we're halfway there. And so I do think that'll happen. But to Roxanne's point, I mean, if you don't know that something's wrong, what come on, pick up the paper. I mean, you've got civil strife and government problems. I mean, when you guys were talking about the Wendy's burning, the first thing I thought when I saw the Wendy's burning is I thought, imagine if you owned the Wendy's building at a 5 cap, which is a 5% rate of return, which is common for commercial spaces. Well, what do you do? I mean, I guess you have insurance, but I mean, what if you own the next Wendy's up the road? You're thinking, I mean, is this really a good time to somebody owns all this stuff.
Right.
And okay, so that's fine, but you enter a world where plywood is on windows and sandbags are around and rubber bullets are hitting. Okay, does this sound like the type of environment that is a thriving commercial activity, right? I mean, does this sound like a bullish No,
Sounds
this is
so
not
stable.
No,
the way you
it's
describe
exactly
it.
this is what you expect, in a war zone. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so that's fine. I mean, I'm not making any social commentary. I'm just saying that you're not really in a time of robust economic activity. Now, what does this mean for cities? How about I was with the former chairman of the Chamber of Commerce in Tampa yesterday afternoon. I was asking him, what's the tax revenue look like? I mean, there's a rainy day fund, all this stuff. Well, you're going to need it. Because people aren't shopping. I mean, you have to go into a plexiglass booth, to buy a cup of coffee. I mean, it's not exactly facilitating, economic activity, transfer of goods and services. It's not a time for that. So I think people need to be ready for that. Now, what's the government reaction going to be? Last week, the stock market goes down. The Treasury Secretary, we need another $1 trillion. Well, I mean, okay, yeah. How many more trillions? A lot more trillions.
Yeah,
That's how
right.
many. They're going to have a lot more. Who's going to pay for this? Here's what's going to surprise you. No one's going to pay for it.
I think this is an opinion that you'll both agree with. I was talking to one of my friends who's a stockbroker, very successful, very bright guy. And prior to Thursday, because Thursday was just a wonky day in the stock market, I would be saying, well, it's crazy that through all these insane economic times with nobody out spending money for a couple of months, you still have seen growth in the stock market after that dip. And his thought was that the reason people are still investing is because there is nowhere else to put your money. Because of those scenarios you just described, EB, is it safe in certain real estate places? Is it, obviously Treasury bonds, that's not U.S. bonds, that's not really where you want to be. So that was an interesting perspective, I thought.
I have a question. What if an exploration team went out and found 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools of gold? Would it make gold go up or go down?
It would go down because you would increase the supply dramatically. But here's the problem, Pat George, is that I'm on the board of directors of a publicly traded royalty company. We talk about this in the book. I tell how we started that company. It's Metallo Royalty and Streaming. The ticker symbol is MTA. So I go into great detail about how the opposite problem is happening. The gold discoveries, the proven gold in the ground, is in decline. So the price is going up and the supply is going down. So it's the opposite of what you're talking. And there's people hunting for it all over the world. I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of money and capital and lives lost hunting for the next great gold deposit. I mean, it's in full effect, and there's the new supply is not coming online. It's in decline. And so in the next couple of years, as the price goes up, I think people are going to run into this problem where the mine supply is falling. It grows about 1.8% a year, the production, whereas the debt grew 9% last year, the total world debt. You can see these, once you see these numbers, you can see where this is all heading.
Well, and there's no place where there's going to be 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools of quantity in one place, because the way they find gold in the ground, and maybe you can shed a little bit of light on this, but it's highly dispersed. So they have to go through thousands of tons of rock and other ore and things just to get a little bit of gold out of it.
Yes, you can find it in concentrated amounts, but it's rare. And oftentimes you got to drill through, 1,000 meters of rock to get to that. But in Metallo, for example, what we do is we buy royalties. So we take a 1% of everything produced on a parcel of land. And because we're lazy, we don't want to do any of the hard blasting and all this work. I mean, we found, I tell in the book that my partner Brett and I found that this was a bad business. And so we figured out that the royalty business was much cleaner. You have, barely any employees, and it's a lot of diligence work, but it's not a lot of on the ground mining work. So what we do is we try to buy that royalty on an area that's near a past producing claim, and the gold tends to flow onto that claim. So you're exactly correct that you'll oftentimes have 2 grams or 3 grams of gold per ton of rock. So picture the back of a heavy-duty Chevy dually pickup filled with dirt. You're going to have 2 grams of gold in there, and that's a success. This is really tough. I mean, in an ounce of gold, you're going to need 16 trucks full of dirt to get an ounce of gold. You don't find nuggets like in the movies. It's very rare to find. You can find that sometimes, but it's very rare. And oftentimes there's not enough of them to make a mine. It's just kind of an anomaly. So when you find that, so it's gold it's very much an old kind of 19th century choo-choo train business. There's not a lot of technology some, but I mean, it's very labor intensive.
Yeah. So the mining business is not itself a good business model. But what you're doing is you're doing a financing portion of that, the streaming portion, where you're taking royalties Am I describing that accurately or close?
Sort of. I mean, and just so you know, I think the mining business is the world's worst business. I mean, I feel like I give enough evidence in that if your courtroom work, you would think that's a pretty solid case against staying away from the mining business. Stay away. But the royalty business, I think it's the most lucrative business in the whole world. I mean, and I know that's a big claim, but you would think, what about Google? Well, the business is 50 times as lucrative as Google. I mean, you have almost no employees, to generate significant amounts of income. And again, we go through all of that. I tell you the whole secret to the business in there. It's very easy to understand. But what we've done is people, older guys, find a gold deposit in the 80s or something. It takes forever to make this thing a mine, like 25 years sometimes. And so we go to that guy and we say, hey, you're getting up there in age. Why don't you sell us the royalty? And we'll give you stock in Metalla, and it's traded on the New York Stock Exchange, pays a dividend, all these things. And you can sell that stock, or you could give it away, or you can hold on to it. We've bought 48 other royalties, so we have like a lot of diversity with these royalties, and they're all over the world. And that's been a winning pitch. And so we continue to buy royalties like that, and we think that that's the best way to play this market, because as the gold price rises, the value of that gold in the ground rises significantly, and you don't have to worry with strikes and governments and the expenses and accidents, and you're not involved in all these things. You just strictly have a claim on hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold that are set to come out of the ground over the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm. We just had a caller wanted to know about copper and silver.
Well, sure. I mean, copper is a bit different from silver. I mean, and that's more of an economic metal. You look at, the demand side of things. And as you know, Morgan, I'm involved with a company that has copper royalties that will come public soon too. Silver, I think, is more relevant to this conversation because silver is a monetary metal similar to gold, and silver has monetary properties. One thing we talk about in the book is that hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years ago, the Roman soldiers were paid with coins, and the coins sound different if they're made of gold and silver. When they cling together, they make a sound like a tuning fork. It has that sound that kind of carries for a long time, whereas if they were made of bronze or cheap metals, they sound tink, 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 it's very cheap. Yeah. And so they came up with this name, sound money.
Oh, interesting.
That's where the name came from. And so if you take a gold coin and you balance it on your finger, and then you tap it with another gold coin, you'll hear this really long drone. It's a beautiful sound that carries and carries. Now, here's why I'm telling you this. Silver does the same thing. So silver has natural monetary properties. It tends to trade with gold. It tends to be more speculative. It tends to fluctuate more wildly, and silver is very cheap right now. It's maybe $17 an ounce. It's 1/100th the price of gold, which is abnormally cheap, and that probably will change. Now, in the book, we say, look, silver is not really a great wealth storage vehicle. I mean, to store $100,000 worth of gold is very easy.
Yeah, it's not that much.
It's not very much. It's a couple of shot glasses full. To store $100,000 worth of silver, I mean, you need like a whole closet in the guest room. So we tell people if you're just starting out, then silver could be a viable place to start. But as you build wealth, gold becomes more practical.
Well, so I know silver is more accessible to a lot of retail purchasers on the lower level. I mean, what would be the way for somebody who doesn't have a lot of money to get involved with gold?
So if you don't have much money, silver is a good starting point. Although we can talk in a minute about the premiums that you have to pay. I mean, a silver ounce is $17, but you're going to pay $25 for that coin.
Right.
So, I mean, you pay a lot of money in premiums, which tells you something.
Yeah.
There's not that much of it.
Right. It is hard to find it right at spot, what they call spot price.
Almost impossible.
Yeah. And more now than it used to be, because it used to trade a couple of dollars above spot, but now, who knows?
$7-8.
You might be paying $25 to $30 an ounce for silver coins
50%
now.
premium at times.
Right. So, well, we've got all that to talk about and much more. And we're going to get a few more predictions out of EB, I hope, for what some of the future holds for our country. And it's stuff you're going to want to know about. I'm going to put them on the spot a little bit. And we're going to tell you all about that when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show.
We usually go out there right about now, but we are out there with E.B. Tucker talking Why Gold, Why Now? It's his new book, his latest book, and you can find it on Amazon where all books are sold. And E.B., do you have a website as well we can visit?
No, we thought Amazon is the best bet for that because everyone knows how to get there. And if you just type Why Gold, Why Now, it comes right up. And
it is a current bestseller, I'll have to say that. I mean, it's got great reviews. I've read it. You were kind enough to send me an advanced copy, and I even have an actual purchased copy here with me. But it's a very quick read, very easy read. You do not have to be an expert to read it and understand it, and that's something I love about E.B.'s writing. And E.B., you've written for years for various newsletters, for Doug Casey's newsletters. I mean, you've really, really prominent in investing, and particularly investing from a precious metals perspective. And you really know how to make it understandable for folks.
That was the goal. So the goal was not to write it for the 24 experts that I know that have spent their entire life in this business. The goal was to write it so that Aunt Nancy can pick the book up, and at the end of it, she says, I now understand why I thought something was wrong and what to do about it.
That's so nice. Aunt Nancy's going to love that.
She's going to love it. And so we even include who to call to get the gold. I mean, the brokers that I've done business with that I trust, what to ask them on the phone.
Yeah.
What to ask for, how to know if they're giving you a fair price. I mean, we arm you with all the information. And so, Morgan, one thing we were talking about during the break is you think what's going on now is alarming. You're not going to believe what comes next.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So we explain in the second part of the book that these things come in. They don't just happen overnight. It's a series of events that happen, and they build into a crescendo. And we're about only halfway through this process. And so, you've seen all these government money printing. And I mean, go back to 15 years ago and imagine that the Federal Reserve has got $4.5 trillion. Now it's $7 trillion worth of debt on its balance sheet. It's just printing $1 trillion when the flu takes the U.S. by storm. And think about it. It's just really crazy.
Yeah.
But it happens. It's like being eaten by a python or something. I mean, it happens so slowly you barely know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then you say, wait a minute, I'm gonna be all the way in. So this is what people need to back up and see that these things happen in sequence. Now, the next thing we talked about, negative interest rates. You're going to see this. You're already hearing about it a little bit. Okay, then after that, you're going to have forced buying of treasuries because there's going to be no one else to buy the treasuries. Finance the government spending. There's no one else to buy the treasuries. You're going to buy them. So this is going to. We explain how this is going to happen. It's already happened in the EU once. We're going to show you evidence of that, and we're going to explain to you how they're going to do this and why you need to be aware of it before it happens. And then you're going to pay people not to work because that sounds like a crazy idea. There's books about this. We quote from the books and we tell you what's going on, and then we say, hey, guess what? During the virus panic, you paid people about $40,000 a year to not work.
Yeah, we see it happening.
So this is already happening. The evidence is right there. And then just when you think that this is all sounding pretty dramatic, at the end of the day, there's going to be a digital U.S. currency, and it's going to give the Treasury complete and total control of every single dollar. Now the dollars have serial numbers on it, but when this happens, they'll know they'll say, well, Mr. Streetman, you've spent more than your allocation on entertainment this month, and we know because we have control of every single dollar ever created.
Yeah.
And that's coming. That's the final piece of this. Now, once that happens, it doesn't mean life is over. No, it's not over at all. Life is never over. It carries on. You adjust all these things. But your ability to have some money outside of the system is finished.
Yeah.
Even now, people say, well, why would you need so much cash?
Right.
What are you up to?
Go try to take cash out of your bank.
Yeah. What's the purpose of this cash? Please fill out this form. And you say, well, I like to have cash because anonymity. What are you hiding? I mean, so
if you aren't doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to hide.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I love that when you. So okay, but this is all history. This is ancient history. I mean, I have little children. They'll never live in a world where you have this anonymity of having cash. Just think about it. There used to be a $10,000 bill,
right?
And then there was a $5,000 bill and a $500. Now it's $100. $100. I mean, this is barely gas and coffee and a snack.
Yeah, there was a $10,000 bill when $10,000 was actually a lot of money.
Serious money.
Yeah.
I say that when I leave the house to run an errand and pick up some snacks or something pick up a frozen acai bowl or something for my family members. I spend $100 every time I leave the house.
I want to go snacking with Roxanne. This is $300 for mid-morning snack. So the thing is that this is coming to an end, and people need to see the pattern when this finishes. Now, think about this. Most of the world uses dollars as savings. So this is very common. I mean, as you know, I've been to 42, 43 countries or something. I love traveling and spending time in other places. 80% of the $100 bills are outside of the U.S. Mm-hmm. Most of the currency, the physical currency, is outside of the U.S. I mean, you go to Cambodia or any crazy place, and you've got people using the dollar as wealth storage. So during the virus situation, we said there were all these articles that cash is dangerous because the virus could live on the cash. So they quarantined a lot of the cash, which put a huge amount of pressure on liquidity in China. You see how the U.S. uses the dollar as a weapon. Yeah. And so as that weapon loses its power, it shows you that we're headed towards this new way to control the money. Right. This is coming, okay? And I think they'll call it FedCoin. That's a name that I came up with a couple of years ago in 2016. This is not a new prediction. This is something I've been working on for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think they'll call it FedCoin, but they could come up with they always name these things in a way that sound helpful, but they're not helpful.
Okay, we want to grab a minute here for our contest, so we're going to take the seventh caller, 777's Lucky 7, the seventh caller at 888-404-1010. You're going to win a special edition. You cannot get this in the stores. In fact, I'll wager that you won't even be able to find one of these unless you get it as the winner of this contest on our show. A special edition of Why Gold, Why Now. It's got color photographs in it. We've ordered a tranche of them for me personally to give away as gifts, and the seventh caller is going to win one of these right now. So get on the horn with us, 888-404-1010. Now, before we go, I got a question from a listener that came in here, EB, and this listener wanted to know, why is it that as gold is going up, at least in the spot price, the ETFs for gold are not going up at the same rate?
Well, there's a lot of complexity with how this gold is held. I mean, the way to own gold, which we tell in the book, is to own it yourself, physical hold in your hand gold. The ETFs a lot of times own gold futures, and these are paper contracts that are designed to mimic the price of gold, but it's not the same thing. Yeah. You know, it's owning a timeshare. Right. You know, they say, well, you got a beach house, don't you? No, I have a timeshare. Same thing. Well, not really quite the same thing.
All right, well, we got a winner of our contest. Our winner is Cindy. So, Cindy, give your address to Pat George. I'm sure he already took it from you, and we're going to be mailing you a copy. That's a new thing in radio contests. Since you can't come to the station anymore, we're going to be mailing you a special limited edition copy of Why Gold, Why Now. Folks, go out there on Amazon and check it out. I'm sure you're going to love it. And we'd like to thank our special guest, E.B. Tucker. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.